And we're back. Welcome to Spirit Talk Podcast. I'm Annette Dion, the host of Spirit Talk Podcast, and also the owner of the Psychic News Network on YouTube, which you can find if you go to @PsychicAnnetteDion. And this is an historic day, so we decided to push it up and do a show a week earlier than we had planned. And I'm here with Kathy Biehl, the infamous professional Aquarian astrologer. And Donald Trump is presently in the courtroom, I believe, unless he's left. So it's 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it is June 13th. It's the day before the former guy's birthday,
But it's his solar return, so today's really important.
Yeah, so everything's going to have a magnifying glass on it, right?
The energy that he's living with right now is going to go on for at least the next 12 months. It's going to color his experience of reality. And the kicker in this that I just want to mention is in the solar return chart, he's not out in public. I don't see how he'll be on the campaign trail.
So for the year, you mean? Yeah, and I've been saying the same thing. Yeah.
No, he's at home and possibly confined. It's in the chart. Now, I wouldn't have guessed that. I mean, I would have wished it, but I'll confess that much. But this is not somebody out on the campaign trail. There's going to be something putting his efforts very much in a very small space.
So that aligns with what I've been saying for about the past year at the Psychic News Network. I said, because people would ask, is he going to be in prison? What's going to be happening? And I've consistently seen him under house arrest. So I see like an ankle bracelet or something, and that he would be not able to. I don't think he'd be able to go golfing.
That fits completely with what's in his solar return. His solar return has the sun, his expression of being, in the fourth house, which is home. It's not out in the world. And Saturn, which is limitation, is in the 12th house of institutions and retreat and self-undoing and imprisonment. So I don't know if this judge, I mean, I would imagine this judge let him out on bail. I can't imagine any other national security defendant would be cooling his heels in a jail cell forever and a day before trial. But I imagine Trump's being let out. Even so, his solar return chart is a chart of being at home for a year at least.
So has he left the courtroom yet? Do you have the news on?
I have not heard.
Maybe the people in the chat can tell us.
No one has said it yet. It just says all is really well. Yes, we would agree with that.
Yeah, so it looks like I've just speeded up. I have Midas Touch on. Michael Cohen is on. And the most I heard thus far is that he did plead guilty and that Jack Smith is in the room.
Jack Smith's in the room. Interesting. Now, in that regard, somebody at the New York Times pried Jack Smith's birth date out just recently. So that we've been in the dark about what his birth data actually is. So I have a solar chart. I have a chart for him.
Yeah, I heard the other day in the chat on PNN, somebody said it was just last week, right? Yeah.
So his chart interacts really beautifully with all of the important dates involving the announcement of the indictment, the presser that he had, and the arraignment, and the U.S. chart and Trump's chart.
Fascinating.
All there.
Everybody in the chat, call your friends right now because this is big news.
Would you like to hear about what Jack Smith's about?
We most certainly would.
He's an incredibly intellectual, detail-oriented person. He has the Sun and Mercury in Gemini, which make him really, really nimble. His Sun is conjunct the seventh house cusp of the U.S. chart, which is the house of partners, allies, and open enemies. So he's right there. His Sun is in an exact trine with the U.S. Saturn in Libra, Saturn being the courts, justice, the legal system in Libra, our agreements, our laws, the justice system. So he's exactly in flow with that.
Right.
And that degree, the US Saturn was on the ascendant, on the horizon, both when Trump announced that he had been indicted that evening from Bedminster, and also when Jack Smith walked out to the podium to talk about the indictment. So those of you who are who are nuts for degrees, 14 Libra seems to be real important. Other things about him. So he's got this pile up in Virgo. Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Virgo is ruled by Mercury. But what he has in Virgo is more generational. Say he was born at the end of the 60s. And he's got a really loose version of a signature. There was a certain group of Gen Xers that have a change agent signature. I brought this up because McCarthy has it tightly. Jack Smith has it more broadly, but he also has Jupiter, which expands everything it touches, and the South Node, which is your default behavior. So he's got this pile of I'm going to chew on it 2 bits. And it's like God is in the details. God figures into his chart in a lot of ways. Interestingly, he has kind of a sense of calling shown by a number of things in his chart. In addition to this, I'm going to chew things like crazy. The fact that he's a triathlete. He has Mars in Sagittarius. That can be highly active. It can also be putting your energy toward things that have to do with the legal system, Sagittarius. And the most beautiful thing is Venus, which represents what you value and your relationship style, your inner woman, all that kind of stuff, is at the very end of Aries. This is Wonder Woman, huntress, fearless, I'm just going to go for it. Energy. And the solar eclipse that was the new moon in April was right smack on this. So it like set him onto a couple of year trajectory that changed his life. He was working in The Hague. He was working on war crimes. And it changed what he was involved with, and bam, set him in this new direction. That's going to continue for a while.
Well, yeah, Bam is right too, because he wiped out during the triathlon or during training, and he got physically injured. So sometimes those things just put us where we're supposed to be. It's kind of, symbolic. So he's a Gemini with Virgo rising?
No, we don't know his rising sign.
Okay, so we've only learned his birthday, which is June 5th.
There's one other piece in this that is absolutely wonderful. If he was born before like 10:30 at night, so for most of the day, the moon was in Aquarius, sign of the people, which is where the US moon is, which would make an automatic link to the greater collective. And even if it was in the very first degrees of Pisces, it would still be conjunct the US moon, just out of sign conjunct. So this makes him a really important figure for our country.
And you got my email earlier today, right? I was walking the other day and I thought, because I do read past lives, and I was thinking about George Washington and the role that he played in just, birthing America, really, and the amazing way that he was able to think and strategize, and the focus that took, and the divine guidance that it must have been going on with George Washington. So I was taking a walk and I thought, gee, I wonder if Jack Smith may have been George Washington in a past life. And it checked out, yes. So wouldn't that be an interesting thing? We can't prove it, obviously, but similar and just like single focused.
Along with that, Jack Smith's North Node, his path of destiny, is toward the end of Pisces, which connects with everything, and it is real. It's exactly trine his Neptune, which means an unbroken current of something other than rational thinking, which is fascinating for somebody who is so intellectual, that he's got this piece that just intuition or guidance, or
Right.
we don't know anything about his
Yeah. Like, we're going to fight this battle. It looks like we'll totally lose it, but kind of like, but I just have this focus and this
and
knowing.
maybe God speaks to him. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
well, I think so. But how do we define that, really? I mean,
the current placement of Neptune is right on top of his North Node. So he's got this first off, it's a calling, and then he's got this almost like magical status in the zeitgeist, in the way people are looking at things.
So he sounds like a total hero. Do you see anything that would indicate challenges?
The thing in the next year, not now, later next year, Saturn, I have mentioned this. Saturn is in a mutable sign.
Mm-hmm.
And Saturn is pressuring anybody who's got a mutable sun or moon or ascendant, which would be Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces. Yeah. So there's this vice, this pressure, this suit up, show up. There will be consequences. I'll reward you if you put your nose to the grindstone.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said, the Geminis are feeling the squeeze. Well, anybody like that is feeling the squeeze. So Saturn's been doing that to his Mercury. So there was stuff that he had to say, and he had to be as responsible as possible, or there would be consequences. And what he came up with is something that wasn't required. That's a very detailed indictment that was issued. It's 49 pages long, and it is what's called a speaking indictment. Mm-hmm. Speaking, fascinating. Mercury.
Right. And Sagittarius.
It's because it lists all the facts.
Mm-hmm.
And compare and contrast the indictment that Alvin Bragg issued, just said, here are the crimes. We're going to prove this. This one said, and he did this, and this. So there was a level of specificity that was a response to Saturn going, you must do this. Well, later next year, Saturn's going to do that to his son. Later next year, people who were born in the middle of Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces are going to have the same kind of push, like be an adult, you got to be an adult. If you're not an adult, you're going to get it. Mm-hmm. There will be consequences, but if you suit up and show up, we're going to give you a nice reward. So
in the middle of, you mean like midway into the sign?
Midway in the sign.
Yeah. Like I'm December 9th, for example, and that's like
midway into the sign.
Middle. So this is Gemini meets Gemini in the courtroom.
Yes.
What do you? Go ahead.
The day that either when Trump announced that he had been indicted, I've got notes everywhere, or the next day when Jack Smith had his presser, the sun was right up smack on top of Trump's Uranus. Now that's his change agent indicator, but it's also his disruptor planet. It's him being a rogue actor, a chaos agent. So the sun illuminated that. You probably want to know how Smith is going to do with Trump, and it's truly wonderful.
And I'm just also trying to remember, we've been through a couple of eclipses as of recently. The April, the solar, May, the lunar in Scorpio, and in April it was in Aries, the new moon. So you mentioned during the eclipse somebody announced something. Do you remember what that was?
In
April?
Does
anybody?
I can't remember. I mean, there's so many things that have happened.
Yeah. Like Jack Smith got appointed. We'll have to look at the date, the timeline on all that.
Well, I think he was appointed before then.
Yeah, he was, but I wondered. Okay, so I'm just reading the chat. They didn't include Bedminster boxes. There's a whole lot that we haven't
There's more
seen
coming.
yet. I mean, that was just like that 49-page indictment.
It's built into the lineup of this indictment when it was announced in today's arraignment. It's built in that there are more beats to this.
Yeah, this seems like a small fraction of the crimes.
And they all involve his home. So
interesting.
Bedminster would fit into it. Yeah.
Yeah. So moving forward with Trump, what do you see that's most challenging for Trump?
Trump. Well, first off, this prosecutor has a direct line into his backroom behavior.
This is so exciting that we got the Jack Smith's birthday.
A direct line into his backroom behavior. And let me back up. Last week, Tuesday and Wednesday, Mars in the sky, which is a man, which is action, which is attack, crossed Pluto in Trump's 12th house. Pluto is big money, powerful stuff, corruption, crimes. 12th house, self-sabotage, self-undoing, things that are hidden, backroom activity. So something hit right when this indictment was spat out that started this. This week, what we have that is lovely is as Mars, action, a man, attacks, pushing forward, it's going to go across a series of levers triggering, moving forward on stuff that got stirred up by the eclipse at the beginning of May.
Right.
And the midterms.
Right.
So,
you had mentioned that.
All kinds of stuff. Okay, so that we're in the middle of that right now. And that goes across the information houses of Trump's chart. The houses that have to do with papers, information, social media, stuff he's been saying, also international relations.
Yep.
And things having to do with the legal system. So there is more. I would not be surprised if more comes out this week. Then in July, we have a Venus retrograde. Normally, that's not a big deal, except Venus is traveling through Trump's 12th house of stuff that's been going on in the background.
Hidden things.
It's also one of the houses it's a house of confinement and institutionalization. So as Venus is going to spend a lot of time there. She's there now. She's there into the fall. Normally shouldn't spend that long. And Venus goes retrograde on July 22nd. I think she pretty much kicks off of Trump's Mars. So she'll go over it 3 times, looking at money things that he has done, things he's done to aggrandize himself. I would say more with women will be coming out at that time.
Wow.
And then interestingly, at the end of August, while Venus is still retrograde, Mercury goes retrograde in the part of his chart that deals with documents.
And revisiting things.
Papers.
Yeah, from the past.
Social media posts. So I'd say that would be more.
What is it in Trump's chart that makes him such a self-saboteur? Is he aware of what he's doing?
If the birth time that everybody uses is accurate, and I know people who take issue with this. I know someone who knows his second wife who says he was born earlier in the day, so that his ascendant would be in the middle of Leo rather than at the very end of it. But if this time is accurate, what does this is the fact that Mars, his planet of action, is in the house of the subconscious and self-undoing.
Yeah, so, it does seem like that, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I've been just psychically tuning into almost like there's a part of him that wants to be punished.
Well, we could make quite the argument for that based on what we know about his upbringing.
Subconscious, right? I mean, that's what you kind of are seeing in his chart,
Hmm.
right? What would be the specific?
Mars in the 12th house
Oh, okay.
would be that. Yeah, Mars in the for anybody, Mars in the 12th house, you might have a tendency to trip on your own shoelaces, to set things up in a way where you end up, you cause your own problems.
It almost feels like subconsciously deliberate. Like just going and going and going and lying and lying and lying and lying for all these decades. And just being like, somebody just stop me. I don't know what you call that.
Cry for help.
Do
I
all
don't know.
malignant narcissists have that? Maybe to some degree. I'm not a psychologist, but I play one in my work.
Now, interesting that you bring up the lying because what his talent is shown second house of resources
Yeah.
and talents and abilities. He's got Neptune, which is I call the cosmic fog machine. Neptune is illusion. It can be great inspiration, but it's illusion. It's stuff that you can't touch, and it's in Libra, which is deals or agreements you make with people. So his big talent is grifting, essentially, with that, or making things that aren't really what they appear to be.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I bring this up is Saturn, good old Saturn, has been making an adjustment aspect to that. It's done it once. It's going to do it 2 more times before early next year. So there could be more things coming out that make it harder for him to, I don't
pull the
know,
wool over people's eyes? To
fundraise off of what he's been up to.
Right. And there's a house. I'm not an astrologer. I think everybody knows that. There is a house that has to do with other people's money.
Yes.
Right? Which
The
one is
eighth
that?
house.
The eighth house. And is it aspected there that he'll be less successful at there's a grift thing that he's been doing forever? Or will it continue to be effective to grift?
No. But what I do see is that there is a great influence coming out of someone in authority who he will see as victimizing him. So that'll be anything having to do with the government coming at this.
Yeah, he's just blaming it. He's playing the victim. They're doing it to me, weaponizing the government. Yeah, that's all very present.
Now, here is the one thing that does speak to what you asked about. So Neptune in the sky currently has been in an unbroken flow with Trump's signature for how he gets his money. He's got the planet Saturn and the planet Venus, which is a money planet, also women, in the sign of Cancer, having to do with family matters in the 11th house of group organizations. Right. So this is the Trump organization. And there's been this flow. Well, Jack Smith's North Node, his path, is right smack on that.
And that's huge. Isn't that huge?
I think so.
That's pretty huge.
But also where Neptune is right now has been lighting that up as well. So there will be all kinds of stuff coming up.
And July, well, you mentioned July, and then going into August, that's when the Fani Willis show starts, right?
Yeah. And then when we get into October, which is
month.
when the Trump organization is going to trial in New York.
Yeah, Letitia James.
For, and he's involved in this one. And this is for lying about valuations with insurance and with tax, like all kinds of financial fraud. The solar eclipse, again, reset button, happens in his house of information, communication. I mean, he may have a gag order put on him.
And that's in October. What's the date?
At that point.
What's the date?
Well, it's early in October, but eclipses aren't one-day events. They will be feeling it, and this is going to pull in his second house, money house, Jupiter, which expands everything. So this could shut down a lot of the expansiveness, be able to pull things in, what people have referred to as Teflon.
We'll be able to see that he's truly broke.
Well,
Right.
that's highly possible.
Huh. Interesting.
And what I see as the end, as the where all this is heading, next April, Uranus blows things up, goes across the midheaven in his chart. Now you say, oh my God, that's so far away. But let's look at this. Okay, how many different court cases have we talked about so far today? And we don't even know when the January 6th things are going to come
I know.
up.
It's almost like we can't just like hold them all in our mind so we forget. Oh, yeah, there's that. Oh, yeah, there's that. There's that crime. There's that crime. Now,
So by April of next year, it changes his relationship with the public. It just blows something up.
So when you say blow something up, we don't want to freak people out. It's a metaphor.
It's your Tower card.
Okay. That I understand that.
Yeah.
And you've looked at, and I think we have talked about this in previous shows, we've looked at Trump and compared to like Trump versus the United States, like Trump's chart versus the United States chart, right? And
yes,
did we see, I mean, my theory has always been, because people have asked me many times, what was his role? What was his soul's role? And I feel like it was a soul contract that he would force America to fix our democracy, which is really, really horribly broken. To
he
the
would.
point.
All of his Gemini, including that Uranus, all of that Gemini falls in the 7th house of the U.S. chart, which is allies and partners and open enemies. And he brought a lot of people in. I mean, yeah, there are always Geminis involved, but he brought an extraordinarily high number of Geminis of a certain ilk.
Yeah, in this
into
country.
the situation,
Right.
and they all played a role with all of this.
Do you see the corruptness of him and other lands, other, like Sagittarius rules other places and travel and the connections, the international crime connections? Does that show up?
That's
Because I mean, that's about to. We won't be able to handle how much comes out about that. The international corruption.
I don't have that chart exactly on me, but I will say that his Pluto that planet that I see as like, this is the marker of all this stuff that's been going on behind the scenes for decades, is very, very close to the U.S. North Node, which is our path. So there is a transformation of how we do things and how we handle things that comes from dealing with him.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. We would not strengthen our democracy without this thing that we have to resist against. It's really testing our muscles.
It's a phoenix.
Right. Right. So hopefully the crashing was January 6th, 2021. We went to ashes and we rise like the phoenix. I don't know if you have the U.S. chart. When?
What I'll say about that is this. Today, as of the arraignment, Pluto, planet of transformation, it returned yesterday on the 11th, actually 2 days ago.
Oh.
Pluto is back for some cleanup work in the sign of Capricorn. Right. Pluto's been in Capricorn since 2008. Last year, Pluto 3 times went across Pluto in the U.S. chart, which is 27 degrees Capricorn. So the U.S. had its Pluto return. Capricorn deals with institutions. It deals with foundations. It deals with physical infrastructure. Okay, so a couple of things. First, we have a president who actually puts money into the infrastructure.
Yeah.
But on a more symbolic level, we've been fighting over what the ground rules are and agree whether we can agree or not agree on what the ground rules are. And through all this, the corruption and rot in various institutions has come to light, including in the Supreme Court, which got really intense as Pluto moved into the final degree of Capricorn earlier this year. So my point being, right now, Pluto has now moved back into Capricorn. It's going to be there until mid-January next year. And this is a marker. This is a timer for whatever's going on with this arraignment, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something now that is going to be a process that's going to hit a different point by the time Pluto gets back to 29. It's going to go from 29 to 27. This fall, it's going to go back over the US Pluto. It's like glance it. It's not going to be exactly on it, but glance it one last time for 250 plus years. So we're doing massive cleanup work about, it's like, cleaning out our root canal that went bad.
Yeah. For the future.
For the future.
Yep. We're setting it up. So that Pluto went into Aquarius, I remember, was it March?
March 23rd.
It was March, okay. And it's going into Capricorn now.
It went into Capricorn on the 11th, and it's there until mid-January.
So Sunday it went in, okay. And then, so Pluto and Capricorn at the current time, we can expect to see what kind of movement? Can we expect to see more order or?
Well, I would say more stuff coming to light and then looking at it and starting to come up with how we're going to deal with it.
Yeah, it's getting the work done. Capricorn's about kind of being methodical and getting the work done. Just, I think of it, the mountain goat going up the hill.
Mm-hmm.
Just diligent, pretty straight ahead. And in Jack Smith's chart, do you see that? I mean, he's a triathlete, so he's got the ability to hang in there and keep going when the going goes tough, right?
That trines all of his Virgo. So Pluto at the end of Capricorn is in an easy flow, unbroken flow, direct channel to all of his Virgo. Fix it, do it better, get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, leave no stone unturned.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, yeah. Get the work done. No obstructions, Trump tries to obstruct, but that's been busted open.
So I would say that Pluto back in Capricorn while it's retrograde is when stuff is going to break on the corruption in the former administration and in the Congress about trying to keep the election out. And so that would be not just Georgia, but federal charges for what happened on January 6th. Let me give you the timeline for Pluto.
Yeah, it seems like this is a time with Pluto and Capricorn where all the facts would be laid out and looked at and decided how to be dealt with.
There's one more pass, all right? Next year, middle of the year, Pluto goes back into Capricorn for a few final months, but it only goes back to the degree where it currently is. Okay. So this story that this goes for the arraignment today. It's got these little lily pads in the story. This is one. There'll be one in the fall. There'll be one. Well, no, actually, there'll be one for the next month. Pluto sits at 29 Capricorn until like July 26th or something. And then it'll be there again in right around Christmas into the middle of January and then next summer. So there will be things with this. And then we can also throw in what Saturn's up to in terms of what's happening with this particular proceeding that was launched today. Saturn is going retrograde on the 17th. Saturn has been sitting at a degree since the beginning of June. So it's only going to get to 7 degrees Pisces this year. It's been sitting there all month. On the 17th, it retrogrades. It doesn't move off that degree until early July. It'll be back there in February. So there's another time period linking. So some big major stuff happening in the first 2 months of next year with Pluto going back into Aquarius and then Saturn returning to where it is right now.
So let's compare Pluto, if we can just maybe have some keywords. Pluto in Aquarius, like maybe a couple adjectives.
Okay, so there's a difference in how power operates. When Pluto is in Capricorn, it's institutional power.
Okay, that's good.
When Pluto's in Aquarius, it's much more collective power, individuals coming together for good or bad. Okay, the French Revolution happened with this, and we saw how citizens got kind of crazed at that point. But this is much more localized, community-based power banding together to do something rather than 4 or 5 oligarchs saying, you're all going to do my bidding. Like, okay, maybe not.
Right. So there's like kind of an interplay of, it seems like a nice balance.
Could be.
Yeah. Get the work done and break it up. Yeah.
So AI is going to be an issue, and who's in control. All right. And actually with both Saturn and Pluto, control and power are issues. They're just issues in different ways.
Now, let's take a peek if you have the chart in front of you. We've mentioned that this is going to be a pivotal month for Kevin McCarthy. And we've seen a back and forth. I mean, he went ahead, we got the debt ceiling raised, and then he just played the total hypocrite and flipped back. And they're talking about all the things they want to take away from the United States. I've also felt a lot around Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's just on the brink of something big. You know, she's really pushing the envelope, seeing how much she can get away with, just like Trump. When is her birthday? Do you know?
Her birthday is May 23rd.
Oh, okay. So she already had it.
She's a 1 degree Gemini, and her moon is also in Gemini. She's all Gemini. Just
not even two-faced.
I want to go on record. Gemini is not an inherently awful sign, okay?
No sign is, right? Let's be clear.
No, they can be very flexible. They can be very fun. They can be very playful. They can keep things light whenever things are horrible. So, all right, starting with Kevin McCarthy. Now, what has been going on with him is, when I mentioned Mars hitting the levers from the eclipses, he's one of the people who's very likely to have stuff this week become untenable. And then with Pluto back in Capricorn by 2/3 of the way into July, Pluto's going to be in a direct current to his Mars in the house of other people's money. There could be revelations coming out between now and the end of July. I would find it very difficult for him to hold on to his position with what is being detonated this month. I mean, I went out immediately when we first talked and said he's out this month. It's highly probable. It's highly probable that this is the end of the line of his speakership. And it's going to be one of those, the call is coming from inside the house things.
Oh, yeah. Literally inside the house.
Literally inside the house. And then things get trickier with where his money's been coming from.
I was just about to ask you that. You read my mind. Like, could this be where we find out why? Like, when after January 6th, when he just knew we had to impeach Trump and unseat him immediately, even though he was about to leave office. And then he went to Mar-a-Lago. That flip. I think the money connection will be there. I mean,
that very well could be. There may also be a
bribe.
Entertainment purposes only blackmail and extortion connection.
It has that feeling. Oh my gosh, does it have that feeling? For especially Kevin McCarthy, but like Lindsey Graham, I would say, same kind of energy.
That is a sad situation.
I mean, where it's like they're one person, speaking of being two, like, we all have an angel and a devil. It just seems more pronounced in Geminis to me. but where they can go from, I remember Lindsey Graham, there's video of him praising Joe Biden, several years ago. I love your mug. You always have great mugs.
Thank you.
Pentacle.
Attention to detail.
Yeah. But they're things that I'm all about. So he's praising Lindsey Graham's praising Joe Biden. They were like good friends. He's the nicest person. And him in his southern accent. And to flip the way that he has. So he's another one I would say blackmail, extortion,
I don't
something.
have his chart out, but
Yeah, I don't think we've looked at his chart, but he just came to mind when I thought of Kevin McCarthy, the way he flipped.
He has a lot of water in his chart.
That would make sense.
And that much I remember. And who knows, Saturn's probably setting stuff off. Before we drop the topic of Kevin McCarthy, I do want to mention Kevin McCarthy's having his Saturn return this year. Saturn has already moved across his Saturn once. It'll do it 2 more times before the end of the year. Saturn returns, everything's tested. And
he's right out there. We've been talking about that. So this is it. What's going on this week that makes it seem like this could be the week for Kevin McCarthy's ouster?
The reason is that this is the week that Mars starts hitting the levers of the different eclipses, and the eclipse at the midterms was exactly on McCarthy's Jupiter with Uranus right there. So
there's no hope for Kevin.
Hitting that, it's like
there's no hope for Kevin.
Blowing things up.
It's over. He's out of here. Just like I was saying about Ken Paxton. Out of here. Lately, I've been saying that about Marjorie.
Oh, well.
Out of here. You're done.
Saturn is going to really, things are uncomfortable for her. Okay, so Saturn is, that's interesting. I had not caught that. She does have a link to Kevin. Isn't that interesting?
Well, yeah.
At any rate.
He'd do anything for that woman. You remember that? He said that. I'll do anything for that woman. That was around the time that he was on his 15th vote to get speaker.
Right. So.
It's in the chart.
Things about her. First off, with exactly the same timing that Kevin McCarthy is going to have, Saturn has already pumped up her Saturn, which is in her solar chart. I don't have a time of birth, but in her solar chart, it's in the house of resources. So she's like beholden to other people. So Saturn's 3 times hitting that same time frame as
3
Kevin's.
times? Wow.
It's already done it once. It's going to do it 2 more times on the same schedule as Kevin McCarthy's Saturn return.
Fireworks.
Secondly, this Libra solar eclipse early in October is on her Uranus in the 6th house, which is what you do on a daily basis now. Could it be she's ejected? Might be.
Yes. The psychic says yes.
Psychic says yes.
I have seen it all along, and Boebert too, and Matt Gaetz. Interestingly enough, I don't need you to look up all their charts. I didn't prepare you for that. But Matt Gaetz, I said, when the DOJ dropped the charges, I said this is not over. Not sure why they did.
This is part of Mars just going along and going, here's a lever. Here's a lever. Exactly.
That's a good way to kind of illustrate that. That's true. Yeah, so they reopened the case against Matt Gaetz. I was surprised they dropped it, but I've never seen him getting off scot-free. In fact, I'm trying to think of who will get off scot-free, and I'm not really coming up with too many.
I'm with you.
That's good. Good news, everyone.
Seeing people talking about how we're going to have a good Christmas. Yes, I think so. I think Christmas is coming early.
Oh, you can see the chat. I didn't realize you were looking at the chat.
Oh, no, I can't. I mean, I have to do this.
Yeah. We're going to have a great Christmas. Indictments. Let's have Christmas in July. Or how's that? Who else did I want to ask about? Maybe somebody in the chat. George Santos, we had his chart, right? When's
I
he?
would not use any birth date that's flying around for him. I don't believe
You
anything
have to rely on the psychic for that.
is accurate.
I think maybe Gemini. We love
However,
Geminis. Don't
I
get us
would,
wrong.
he could be a Pisces actually, a chameleon, but I would, or a Cancer. He kind of has that kind of low end pissy feel.
Yeah,
Cancer's
yeah.
gonna not be mad at me anyway.
The bad end.
I think he's part of Mars going down the little gauntlet, saying with stuff from the midterms.
Right.
I have long seen, or in April, Uranus returned to the position that it was at the midterms, only then it was direct. And I thought, here's when it starts. And the first thing that happened was a member of the North Carolina legislature, suddenly the person who had cried on the floor about having an abortion, who had just been elected. Oh, guess what?
Right.
I'm with the GOP, gave them a supermajority. So there have been these switcheroos, and now they're going to start coming into Congress, and I think Santos is one of them.
So, according to the United States chart, where we see all these shifts and changes, we see optimism moving into next year.
Yeah, I think so.
So we will save our democracy, astrologically speaking. It doesn't look like it's all going to fall apart and we're going to be a fascist country.
No, and I would really take hope, faith in the fact that the rising sign, the appearance, the identity of both Trump's announcement that he was indicted and the actual arraignment starting today, both of those have the U.S. Saturn, the rules, the government in Libra, the courts right there on it. So the system is on this, and Jack Smith fits perfectly with it. And I would imagine most of the prosecutors working for him fit in with it too.
So do you think that what's going on with Trump right now, does it look to you like, it looks to me psychically that this is the tip of the iceberg and things are just going to start coming down the pike really fast? We talked about that last time, that it's going to be one thing after another in a positive way, justice happening. So eventually the whole ball of wax will be, these people are out of here and we are back to business. Like really the problem the United States is having right now, in a nutshell, is, I call them the party of fascists. These members of the Republican Party, that's way too many of them, that are actually fascists. When they're out of the way, I'm not going to say if, I'm going to say when they're just gone, they've been unseated, they're in prison, whatever, the United States will be in really good shape to deal with the other problems. I don't mean it's going to be like nirvana. We'd love that. We have a lot of, especially with climate change, a lot of problems to deal with. But at least this thing, these wedges that have been in the way of our growth, will be out of the way. That's what I'm hoping and praying for. That we'll get to be, the Democrats will be in charge. We'll have the trilogy, right? The Democrats will be in charge and we'll be on our way. I mean, Joe Biden's doing great with the economy and jobs and bringing manufacturing back and keeping gas prices low. And then you listen to these fascists and these Trumpsters, and they're just talking the opposite whole story, which is like, that's not happening, that's not happening, that's not happening. It is happening. America's doing great. We need the obstructionists out of the way. And I think that we can look forward to that. Anne's asking, when will members in Congress be held to account for their part in the sedition? You mean January 6th, I think she means.
Well, I think that's going to happen while during this Pluto retrograde, which goes on till
I feel it soon. I feel like now that this is underway today with the stealing of the secret documents, I feel like next there's going to be a heavy concentration on the insurrection, and that's when we're going to hear about all the members of Congress that were part of it actively. I mean, I see like Jim Jordan. I mean, they're losing their minds. They're not even making any sense when they're interviewed.
Before the beginning of by the beginning of October
They'll be
is when those proceedings get under. That's what I'm seeing with Pluto in Capricorn. So until it goes direct, once it goes direct, then move ahead. But don't think this is the only document case.
No, I'm sure that it isn't. You mean with Trump?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's still the matter of what happened with the stuff at Bedminster.
Thank you for your donations. Yeah, Bedminster. There's a lot there too. I was surprised last summer that they didn't go directly to Bedminster.
We don't know.
Yeah, I was just about to say, well, maybe they did, but we didn't find out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was not horribly far from it recently, and for a change, I didn't see any Trump banners or people driving up and down the main street with gigantic Trump flags on their car.
And there weren't a lot today from what I gathered. I just caught a few minutes of the news before we came on, and I heard there were about 1,000 people.
I saw an image of a woman with a clipboard handing out T-shirts.
T-shirts that said what?
They were pro-Trump T-shirts, but a woman with a clipboard handing out T-shirts. Now,
you think she was taking email addresses, or what do you think she was doing?
I don't know if these were paid actors.
Oh, yeah, that would fit. Right. Yeah. Well, weren't they paid? It was said many times that Trump rallies, his presidential rallies back in 2020, were paid attendees, that they got a bus and they transported. They were like on tour for Trump, taking a tour bus, going to those different locations and standing in the back with their signs. Yeah, so they may have been paid. And in the chat last night at PNN, many people were saying that they hired buses. The Trump people had hired buses, or Trump had paid somehow for buses to come in to cause all kinds of ruckus today. But I didn't see any violence happening today. I really do sense that his fans are waiting. They're waning. They're waiting away. They don't feel like such a threat anymore.
Seems like less and less. Yeah. I've read things about people actually making statements on Newsmax that kind of fit facts about this.
They fit facts? Newsmax has facts?
I know. That was okay. I don't watch it myself. All right. But anyway.
Speaking of fake news, CNN, Chris Licht. I know I don't expect you to have a chart for CNN, but as far as the United States chart, is there an indication that we will at least go back to some semblance of at least 51% more truth telling, or is that something that you're able to see?
We've been in a fog for a number of years, and Trump has played into the fog.
Neptunian, right?
Eclipses, yes, and eclipses we had a couple of years ago really exacerbated the fog, and that started kicking in about when, in June, way before the election, Trump started saying it was going to be stolen.
Right.
So when he started the big lie, well before there were any returns. At that point, not only did we have this fog and gaslighting and lying, pumping things up and walking into eclipses that were going on involving information channels and broadcasting. But Neptune has been opposite the US Neptune. Neptune has been in our chart, and Neptune has been rolling around where it was before the Civil War. And
where was
it's moving out of that.
Where was it?
At around 22 degrees
of
Neptune.
Pisces?
Of Pisces. And the US Neptune's at 22 Virgo.
Because it's been bizarre. It's like, how are people even saying these ridiculous things in the word salads? And like, I mean, it really gets infuriating. It's like, don't talk to me if you're not going to make sense, right? But
Well,
that's been going on for several years now.
several years. And a piece of good news out of this is, as I've been saying, Saturn is going to be the cleanup batter. Saturn is moving slowly through the territory that Neptune occupied when this stuff mushroomed way out of control. And it won't actually hit this for about a year and a half, but we're building toward it. And I see limits, constraints clearing up, fog lifting, maybe even, oh, is it possible? A semblance of government regulation coming
We need
back
that. Oh, we
in.
so need that. Yeah. If when the Democrats have taken over, yeah, we'll have that.
Well, and let's point out also, there was a Supreme Court decision that came down on Thursday that kind of went by the wayside because Trump announcing that he had been indicted
Yeah.
took all the
Right.
all the air out of the room.
Yep.
The Supreme Court threw out Alabama's redistricting maps because it took all of the black population and stuck it in one district instead of in two. 27% of the state was being put over in this one little corner. And why is this important? There are a whole bunch of other redistricting maps cases that are on their way up to the Supreme Court. If by a bare majority, 5-4, Kavanaugh went with Roberts on this, they said, oh, this map needs to be redrawn. Well, in all of these cases that currently headed to the Supreme Court that involve redistricting, that involve gerrymandered maps, in each one of them, the court said, yeah, we'll hear it, but they didn't put the pause button on use of the maps in the last election. So it put its little finger wham on the scales. And there's something like, I mean, that decision played a role in the GOP taking the House.
Right.
If those maps hadn't been used. So the fact that this is now going on is and this is huge. It's an indicator that all these maps are going to have to be redrawn. Now, there are legal commentators who are even more cynical than I, and I'm pretty cynical, who think, well, this is just the first step. So they didn't gut the Voting Rights Act this time, but boy, they're going to do it next time. Maybe, maybe not. But
I doubt it.
For right now, we have this in place that is going to result in the next election having maps that are more accurately drawn.
Fair. Yes.
And I want to throw into that, the DOJ is looking into what is going on in why is this state such a problem in the Fort Worth area. In the county where Fort Worth is, the new election commissioner got the guy who ran the elections, ousted him, and they're setting new things up that are really, really, really screwing with how the voting is supposed to go. And a bunch of Dems wrote to the DOJ and said, this smells. And the DOJ said, we agree. We're going to look into this. That just happened today. So.
Oh, I have to catch up. When you were a kid, did you ever go out like into the woods or something and you saw a rock and you're like, oh, I think I'll lift that rock and see what's underneath it. And then there's like, you lift up the rock and there's all these creepy crawlies underneath.
If I were lucky, it was doodle bugs. But if it was
right.
like,
we all did that. That's when you're talking about Texas. That's what it looks like to me. It's like, whoa, what is that? Yeah, amazing. What you're saying is confirming that I have said all along, the Democrats won the House of Representatives. They definitely did.
And they won other things. Ken Paxton, who I think is toast.
Yeah. Going to jail, I think.
Ken Paxton admitted last week on Steve Bannon's podcast that he threw out 2.5 million ballots in the county where Houston is because otherwise the Democrats would have won. This explains, okay, Beto did win.
Yeah, I said that too.
A bunch of other stuff. So, and all of this is consistent with the astrology of things flipping. That's
what we need.
Bam, 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 bam. So stuff is is shifting gear. It's fruit basket turnover time.
I'll tell you another one. Charlie Crist won Florida. DeSantis didn't.
I would not be surprised.
Sure as I'm a psychic. I just know. This is optimistic. This is good. This is what we need. Let's have some applause in the chat. We have a little news. Somebody said that a couple of buses ended up in Connecticut. I don't know what that was about today.
Buses of immigrants or buses of Trumpers thinking they were going
I don't know, because I was talking about buses of Trumpsters, so maybe they were talking about immigrants. They you know how the chat is. They have this whole conversation. You jump in and you're like, what are you talking about? So this is so fun. This is so good. Let's, cautiously celebrate today. Justice is happening. We will have our democracy. We'll continue to work hard to save our democracy. Please join grassrootsofdemocracy.com. And my website is psychicannetteDion.com. Please go there and see what I'm up to book a psychic reading. And Kathy, your time to advertise.
Of stuff. My website is empowermentunlimited.net. I have free forecasts for each week, each month, each new moon, each full moon. I am a lunatic. Also,
she's a lunatic.
I have a talk about Saturn in Pisces that I've just released. You can get, there's a link to it on the top page of my site that goes through the historical themes of the 4 times that Saturn was in Pisces in the 20th century. And last week it freaked me out how many things I mentioned suddenly ended up in the news last week alone. Like, must be psychic.
Isn't that funny?
Anyway, it also gives pointers of what it means for you. And if you're having, not just by your sun or rising sign, but if you're having your Saturn return, and there are 3 groups of people doing that: late 20s, late 50s, early mid 80s. And I put the mid 80s in because when I left them out, I got email bawling me out. So yes, there are people in their mid 80s who actually follow astrology too.
Oh yeah.
And then there are people who have Saturn going across their Chiron. And then there are people who have Saturn activating the Uranus-Pluto change maker signature from 64 to 66 that I mentioned. So that's thing 1. Thing 2, later tonight, I'm partway through editing it. I have what's going to be close to a 1-hour video that'll be on my YouTube channel, The Professional Aquarian, that goes through the astrology of the indictment, the arraignment, Jack Smith, how he interacts with the U.S., how he interacts with Trump, blah, 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 blah.
So this is just a teaser today. It sounds like.
Yeah, so lots more, and that's free. The Saturn and Pisces talk is a moderate $30. And I got an email from someone outside the U.S. So this person sat through listening to all these events that had nothing to do with her country, and said that it was some of the most useful astrological information that she'd ever gotten, that I have a way of presenting it that it makes sense to people. So
you're dominating Spirit Talk podcast right now. You're my only guest.
That, like, okay, here I am.
You passed. You more than passed the test. Awesome. I just wanted to, I kind of promised last night, I said I keep hearing that for Sagittarius, this is a huge, good week. Did you see anything in particular, or am I just getting too many things pop up because I'm a Sag?
Mercury moved into Gemini.
Okay. Well, we can talk about that off camera.
And then Venus and Mars are both in Leo, which would pump up the Sages. I guess that would be it.
It might have been that, but I just wondered if there was anything that you saw, though. Or
oh, no, there's no, like...
Nothing major. It's just it's a good time for everyone. Go celebrate.
I honestly think so. If anyone has read my June forecast, you would have picked up from it a giant undercurrent of
all right.
Major hint.
I'm going to go watch it now. And tonight I have a Grassroots of Democracy. We have a 20 on Tuesdays guided meditation for a healed America. Please go to grassrootsofdemocracy.com and sign up to join us. And we'll see you in a couple weeks, probably. We'll let you know. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Have a great day.
It's a little crazy to think I've seen you before. I don't know what makes me